Most men panic when a woman goes silent. That panic is exactly what's costing you everything. Here's what nobody tells you. A woman's silence is not the end of the conversation. It's the most important part of it. There's a woman, mid-40s, composed, beautiful in the way that has nothing to do with youth and everything to do with certainty. She sits across from a man at dinner, and he's talking, filling every gap, explaining himself, justifying, performing. She says almost nothing. Later, her friend asks how the date went. She smiles, not politely, not dismissively, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who already has her answer. He thought silence meant she wasn't interested. She was actually deciding. Most men misread this moment completely, and that misreading costs them more than they realize, because women don't communicate the way men expect them to. And the gap between what she says and what she means, that gap is where most relationships either deepen or dissolve. This is the first thing men get wrong, and we're not going to unpack all of it yet. But here's the edge of it. Women are not confusing. They are precise. The confusion belongs to whoever isn't paying attention. Most people believe a quiet woman is a disengaged woman. That assumption feels logical until you've spent enough time actually watching how women operate beneath the surface. Women who go quiet in relationships aren't shutting down, they're recalibrating. After years of expressing emotions openly and being misunderstood, minimized, or overwhelmed by reactions that couldn't hold the weight of their honesty, something shifts. A woman stops asking, "Will he hear me?" and starts asking, "Is he worth my words?" That question changes everything, and most men never even know it's being asked. This is the first truth about female psychology that most men miss entirely, and we'll return to it. But feel the edge of it now. Emotional withdrawal in a woman is rarely random. It is almost always responsive. Think about that. She didn't become distant. She became strategic. There's a woman who once said something that sounds simple until you sit with it. I stopped explaining myself the day I realized some people were more comfortable with their assumptions than my truth. Read that again slowly. Women who have lived long enough, loved hard enough, and been hurt precisely enough develop a kind of emotional fluency that most men never learn to interpret. They stop broadcasting. They start transmitting on frequencies only the attentive can receive. Psychology actually supports this, though it rarely gets discussed in dating spaces honestly. Women with high emotional intelligence show a consistent pattern. They reduce verbal output when their internal processing increases. Less talking doesn't mean less feeling. It often means more, far more. But here's where the misunderstanding sharpens. From the outside, her quiet looks like coldness. From the inside, it feels like self-preservation. Women who observe instead of reacting eventually understand something deeply uncomfortable. Much of what once passed for intimacy in their relationships was actually performance. Much of what looked like love was actually management. Managing her emotions, managing his ego, managing the space between what she felt and what was safe to say. That recognition doesn't make her bitter, it makes her selective, and selectiveness feels threatening to men who rely on her constant emotional availability to feel secure. This is where the second layer begins, though most men never name it. A woman going quiet doesn't just remove conversation, it removes the emotional labor she was performing invisibly. And suddenly the room feels different and he doesn't know why. But we're not ready to go there yet, because before we talk about what female emotional withdrawal actually signals, we have to sit with this question. One most men never ask themselves honestly. When was the last time a woman was fully herself around you and you stayed calm enough to hold it? If that question landed harder than expected, pay attention. It's not an accident. Most men believe emotional strength means having answers. Women are looking for something different entirely. They're looking for regulated presence, a man who doesn't flinch, doesn't deflect, doesn't shrink, and doesn't explode when she brings her full emotional reality into the room. Here's the truth. Most dating advice skips entirely. Women aren't testing you to be difficult. They're testing you because they've been burned by men who seemed stable and weren't. The tests aren't games. They're memory. And the memory isn't personal to you. It's accumulated. This is the second truth men miss. A woman's emotional guardedness is not about your failure, it's about her history. And her history has taught her something you need to understand before you can ever truly reach her. She has learned that a man who pursues loudly often loves quietly and inconsistently. She's learned that intensity at the beginning is easy. Steadiness at month 7 is rare. She's learned that charm is the entry point, but character is the destination. And she's watching, always, for the distance between the two. Men who understand female psychology know this instinctively. Men who don't keep mistaking her patience for indifference, her boundaries for rejection, her silence for disinterest. Here's the psychological shift most men need but resist. Her silence after an argument is not punishment, it is processing. Women, more than men on average, require internal emotional completion before they can re-engage externally. When you crowd that space, texting repeatedly, demanding resolution, performing frustration, you're not speeding up the reconnection. You're contaminating it. The men who understand this give space without disappearing. They stay available without suffocating. That balance, that exact balance, is what women describe when they say, "He just gets me." It's not magic. It's emotional regulation, and it is learnable. But this is where the story usually gets distorted. People assume emotional intelligence in a man means he becomes passive, agreeable, soft. That assumption is completely wrong. Women are not attracted to men who absorb everything silently. They're attracted to men who choose their responses intentionally. There's a difference between a man who says nothing because he doesn't know what to say and a man who says nothing because he understands that this moment doesn't need words. Women feel that difference immediately, in the body, before the mind catches up. Before we go further, sit with this question. Another one most men avoid entirely. If she stopped performing happiness around you, would you recognize what her real face looks like? That question cracks something open in most men who are honest enough to let it. Because here's the secret most women carry silently. They have been performing versions of themselves around men for so long that being fully seen feels both terrifying and necessary at the same time. She doesn't want a man who loves the performance. She wants a man who could love the reality. And she tests for that man quietly, carefully, in small moments most men walk straight past. She watches how you react when things don't go your way. She watches whether your kindness is consistent or conditional. She watches what you do with information she shares vulnerably. She watches whether you treat her inner world like a burden or a privilege. She is always watching. Not manipulatively, naturally. Because survival taught her to read rooms. Because experience taught her that people reveal themselves in the gaps between their best behavior. This is where the third truth about female psychology becomes undeniable. Women don't fall in love with who you are on your best day. They decide to stay based on who you are on your worst one. Most men invest heavily in impression. Women invest their loyalty in pattern. And patterns, unlike performances, cannot be faked indefinitely. Here's the part that surprises men when they finally hear it. Women often know how they feel about a man within the first few real conversations. Not the polished ones, the real ones. The ones where something slightly uncomfortable is said, and they watch what happens next. The ones where plans change and they notice the reaction. The ones where she says something honest and waits to see if it lands safely. She knows. She's simply waiting to see if you'll become the man she already sensed you could be. That's not manipulation. That's hope with discernment attached. And here's the psychological twist most dating advice never reaches. The men women choose for depth are usually not the most attractive, the most successful, or the most charming. They are the most honest, not brutally honest, emotionally honest. Men who can say, "I don't know how I feel about that yet," without shame. Men who can say, "That actually bothered me," without anger. Men who take up their full emotional space without taking over hers. That combination is rarer than most men realize, and women feel its absence constantly. But we have to draw an important line here, one most conversations avoid. Female psychology is not a code to crack. It is not a system to manipulate. Men who approach women as puzzles to solve rather than people to understand will always hit the same wall. Intimacy that stays shallow no matter how much effort gets performed. Warning signs exist on both sides. A woman who punishes silence, who weaponizes vulnerability, who uses emotional withdrawal as control, that is not the same as a woman protecting her nervous system. The distinction matters. One is guarded, the other is toxic. And learning to tell the difference is part of your emotional education, not hers. But here's the reality most men skip over because it's easier to avoid. Many women aren't being difficult. They're being honest, in the only language they've found safe enough to use around men who weren't ready for their full voice. This is the moment where perception has to change, because once you understand the distinction, pursuit transforms into presence. And presence, real, regulated, consistent presence, is the most attractive thing a man can offer a woman who has spent years surrounded by noise. There is a shift that happens in women when they finally encounter a man whose attention doesn't feel like pressure. It's not dramatic, it doesn't announce itself. It's visible only in small movements, the shoulders dropping slightly, the laughter coming faster, the guard coming down without either person forcing it. That shift is what every woman is looking for, and most men are so focused on saying the right things that they never become the right presence. Here's the identity truth most men resist, the one that restructures everything when it finally lands. Women don't want you to be perfect. They want you to be real. Perfectly curated men feel like projects, impressive at the surface, unstable underneath. Real men feel like ground, and women, especially women who have been through enough, choose ground over glamour every single time. Alignment in a man, knowing what he values, how he operates, where his limits are, is deeply attractive to a woman who is tired of performing peace she doesn't feel. His clarity gives her permission to stop managing. And when a woman stops managing around a man, something extraordinary happens. She arrives, fully, without reservation. That arrival is what men who understand female psychology are actually working toward. Not conquest, not performance, not the temporary victory of a woman who is impressed, but the permanent reality of a woman who is seen and who chooses to stay because being seen feels like home. There is a moment most relationships never reach. It doesn't look cinematic. It isn't announced. It happens quietly, usually during an ordinary evening when she realizes she hasn't thought about whether she's being too much or not enough. She's just present, with you, without cost. That moment is the destination. And the path to it isn't technique. It's truth. Your truth. Brought forward with consistency, with patience, with the rare and extraordinary courage of a man who knows himself well enough not to disappear inside her expectations. Women don't want a man who needs them to survive. They want a man who chooses them clearly. Not desperately, not conditionally, not with invisible strings attached. Clearly, repeatedly. In ordinary moments that carry no audience and require no applause. The men who understand this stop performing attraction and start building trust. Trust moves slowly. It builds in the silences, in the repairs, in the moments when it would have been easier to deflect but you didn't. She notices. She always notices. This is where the final truth settles in. The one that restructures how you move through every relationship going forward. Women are not complicated. They are complete. And complete people require complete presence. Not perfection, not performance, but presence. Men who finally understand this stop asking, "How do I get her?" and start asking something far more powerful. Am I the kind of man she'd be right to trust? That question, if you let it, changes everything. How you show up, how you listen, how you handle what she brings you when she finally trusts you enough to bring it. Once a man centers that question, he stops chasing and starts becoming. And women, and without ever being able to fully explain it, feel the difference instantly. She's not looking for a perfect man. She's looking for a present one who stays, one who sees her, one who doesn't run from the weight of what's real. Be that man, quietly, consistently, without needing anyone to notice. She will notice. She already is.